Sex offender registration. Did you know that according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the state of North Dakota alone has 1,881 per 100,000 population of registered sex offenders? A crucial problem our state faces is the low numbers of law enforcement manpower in comparison to the number of crimes they deal with every day. How would you feel if you found out that you had let your child alone with someone you thought you knew, only to find out later that he or she was actually a sex offender that had slipped through the cracks? Who is to be held accountable to make sure that sex offenders register as they're required to? How is law enforcement supposed to find them again if they choose not to register? And most importantly, how do we ensure that our children are safe in their own neighborhoods? Depending on the state that you live in, sex offenders are only required by law to register for either 10 years or for life, depending on the severity of their offense. While some may be concerned with the rights of the offenders after they have served their sentences, others are more concerned with the rights of the victims and the potential victims yet to come. According to an online digest on Children's Bureau Express, quote, several instances occurred in which private citizens spotted sex offenders engaging in potentially dangerous activities in violation in their paroles, end quote. It is our job as private citizens to be aware of what and who is around us at all times. In 1996, Megan's Law was passed authorizing, quote, local law enforcement agencies to notify the public about convicted sex offenders living, working, or visiting their communities, end quote. What do we do when we don't even know that they're here? Who do we turn to except for those private citizens to help out our overburdened system? The safety and well-being of potential victims should be taken into consideration above the rights of any offender that has served his or her sentence. In accordance with the State of North Dakota Office of the Attorney General, quote, address information is routinely verified every 3 months for lifetime registrants and every 6 months for other offenders. Offender employment and other information also are regularly verified, and the offender's photograph is updated regularly, end quote. This verification process is in place in order to try to eliminate situations like what occurred in Wichita, Kansas just this week. News station WIBW in Wichita reported that a sweep took place that, quote, included 572 Wichita area registered offenders, end quote. Of those, quote, 38 provided incorrect information, some had never lived at the address they provided, or had given addresses that do not exist, end quote. Again, private citizens have got to be vigilant about what is going on around them in their communities. As stated in Sex Offender Laws, Failed Policies, New Directions by Richard G. Wright, quote, in some states, laws forbidding sex offenders to live within specified distances of schools and other places where children congregate have effectively placed entire neighborhoods and sometimes towns off limits. According to the end quote. According to the North Dakota Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, quote, sex offender treatment is an important component of risk reduction. Sex offenders are required to participate in and complete sex offender programming while on supervision. Treatment for low and moderate risk offenders with minor victims is provided through most regional human service centers, Grand Forks, Fargo, Bismarck, Dickinson, and Minot. High-risk sex offenders and or those with adult victims are required to attend and participate in treatment provided through RULE-CPC, end quote. They also state that, quote, community safety is North Dakota's #1 objective for supervision of sex offenders in North Dakota, end quote. In a report from 2009, Anderson Cooper of CNN stated that, quote, sex offenders were less likely than non-sex offenders to be arrested for any offense, 43% of sex offenders versus 68% of non-sex offenders. But sex offenders were about 4 times more likely than non-sex offenders to be arrested for another sex crime after their discharge from prison. 5.3% of sex offenders versus 1.3% of non-sex offenders. We no longer live in an era that kids are safe to play outside, even in their own yards without supervision. Sometimes they're not even safe in their own homes. The solution to this nationwide problem is fairly simple. We need to have stronger rules and punishments in place for when the offense occurs and when rehabilitated offenders are released back into our society. If the offense is low enough to be released, they need a place to go to continue treatments that they started in prison while not in the vicinity of other people they can harm. While yes, people do make mistakes, is that a mistake you'd be willing to knowingly let live next door to your mother, daughter, sister, or niece? It's going to take all of us, law enforcement, the justice system, and private citizens working together to keep our communities safe from people that want to harm others in such a grievous way. I challenge you to get informed and involved in the fight to protect members of our society from dangers of sex offenders. Thank you.